Good evening. Might be some more people coming, I hope. Welcome to our continuing spring lecture series. Next Monday, early announcement, a week from today, Ron Whitty of UIC Architecture from Houston, formerly of Princeton, will be here. He will also be our spring Greenwald visiting critic. And we will also, potentially a week from tomorrow, Tuesday, March 2nd, we may well have a surprise lecture. So keep your schedule open for Tuesday the 2nd of March. And we hope it works out, but it'll be a surprise. So you want to be here, you know at the last minute. It's like a breakout concert rave thing. Tonight we're very pleased to welcome back to UIC Ben Nicholson, our friend and institutional neighbor. Ben, as you know, is an associate professor in the Department of Architecture, Interior Architecture, and Design Objects, AIADO, as opposed to the normal AIADO. Ben, I should say that Ben isn't just the guest this evening, but he's also a kind of co-conspirator at a double event. Because we're both hosting a crosstown classic, like the Cubs versus the Sox. And so tonight we have Ben playing in our field, and tomorrow I play on Ben's field. So I get to throw out the first ball. There you go. The game is on. At this point, I'm not sure who came up with this idea, and I'm pretty sure it's not a good idea anymore. But I will say that we are both very calculating, but not very smart. Because if we were smart, what we would have done is gone to our respective schools and said, I could say, Judith, I can get Ben Nicholson here, but it's going to cost 10 grand. And he could have done the same. And we could have been, money laundering back and forth, but we're not that smart, as it turns out. And in fact, we kept underbidding each other until we got down to nothing but dinner. So it was like this kind of reverse competition that has resulted in no good will come of it. But perhaps it is also a kind of public service announcement, is what we could say it is, which is that people can say, hey, it's actually pretty interesting over there, so maybe we'll go over there. Or people can say, like, I thought it was bad here, but it's really bad over there. So, it's either going to be the grass is greener or stick with the devil you know. That's probably how it all for now. It's a public service announcement. Before moving up to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago in 2006, Ben was a studio professor at IIT and was also a regular guest critic and faculty member, visiting faculty member at UIC, which is in fact where we first met many, many years ago. Ben studied at Cooper Union in the mid-70s, 75 to 79, I think, and received his master's from Cranbrook in 1982, arguably during the school's most productive period, when Daniel Libeskind was the director, along with equally soon-to-become famous fellow classmates, including Don Bates, who's been here, Jesse Reiser, who will be, Ram Shardell, Carl Chu, Hani Rashid, Raul Bunchant, and many others. In 1990, Ben published his book, The Appliance House, signaling his continuing research interest in techniques of collage, in that case, collage of the Sears catalog and Sweets catalog, neither of which exist anymore, so no one knows what we're talking about. Here are these catalogs, you see, you would get them, and it would be about the house. As well as his persistent inquiry into the politics of the domestic interior that was later extended into the Loaf House project, part of which was exhibited at the Renaissance Gallery Society and appeared in the CD-ROM Thinking the Unthinkable House. And an interest was also extended, elaborated later in his book, The World Who Wants It. To judge from the people we've had come through the school, you might well think that a requirement for being a certain kind of architect is to have rather strange obsessions. And you probably wouldn't be wrong in that generalization. You think of the Fall, Vicente Gallart and his mountains, Jesse Reiser and his big hair bands, and Wes Jones and his boss souped-up cars. But even that grew pale as amateurs next to Ben, who is the poster child for wearing his eccentricities on his sleeve. Of course, Ben hails from a country that really invented eccentricity, which has something to do with the slogan, the saying, mad dogs and Englishmen, I suspect. But Ben's brand of architectural eccentricity, I think you could say, is really all too rare here, and especially today. And I suppose that, like a lot of British humor, I don't always get Ben's work, but I really wish there was a lot more of it and a lot more of him around to see. What's become clear really about Ben's work over the years is that in its own way, like some of the things that we're trying to do, it's about inventing new worlds. In Ben's case, that starts with the initial technique or the act of collage, or the bringing together of two incompatible or incommensurate or incongruous things that don't seem to belong together. And a kind of beginning of a hypothetical thought experiment. What if these two things were put together? What if we lived in a world where these two irreconcilable things were at home together? The collagist as an architect in this way is really the designer as a paranoid or even a conspiracy theorist. And what else could explain Ben's obsession with bread tags? He has a collection of them and typologizes bread tags. But equally the secret geometries that he imagines and projects onto Michelangelo's Laurentian Library of paving. Ben, in other words, scours the world, high and low, high art and low art, pop art for pop culture, for patterns. And that's what he really looks for, it's patterns in unlikely places, alternative systems in which to organize the world. In this way, Ben is also an architect of lifestyle, and perhaps this accounts for his moving his own domicile recently to the one-time utopian community of New Harmony, Indiana. Within this peculiar landscape of guns, pickups, and survivalism, Ben is probably the closest we have to a kind of American version of Joop van Lieshout, and probably would have also made a great lead in Cormac McCarthy's The Road. Please join me in welcoming a true architectural survivalist, sparring partner and friend, Ben Nicholson.
Thank you, Bob. Just for the record, this baseball has the word TFC Bank on it, so he knows where his money is coming from. First of all, many thanks for inviting me and for being in this building, which I've spent many nights and hours in over the years. It's a real privilege to be back here and see old friends. Tonight, I would like to give you the next installment of this journey that I've been making through America, and describe to you what it's like to take a chance and bet the house on making a move into rural America, just to see what it's like. 4 years ago, let me put it this way, 10 years ago, I worked on this house called the Loaf House that was about a very tense and teased up notion of the good life, the yuppie life, 2.5 children and mum and dad, and then stopped doing design altogether. And so this really is the last complex project of architectural design. And since then, I've been kind of thinking all over again as to what constitutes the real underbelly of that dark part of American culture that sure finds itself in the countryside. These are arm patches from the first Iraq War, and this is actually Chicago, but it's that lovely moment of lovers and sweetness and all of that residing underneath this incredible weapons system. And so this kind of quality of the ridiculous and the sublime, a piece that I wrote in AD magazine recently, has been wrestling with me. Here is the book Alberti wrote, which is a wonderful political satire. You never think of Alberti doing that, but it's a thread in architectural thinking of imagining what something could be and what it will take to make it be that. After the Loaf House, I worked on a project called The World Who Wants It, a political satire, and this was about doing all of the stuff that is politically incorrect. And so I rented a Hummer and tore up the Utah pristine landscape in order to understand what that vehicle is all about. Worked on projects of dieting. Here was the big man who needed to diet, and so a Sherpa was brought into his presence and took on the weight on his back, and every time he lost 5 pounds, off went 5 pounds from the Sherpa, and ultimately the two humans from the first world and the third world were standing eyeball to eyeball, and the deal was consummated. Projects about beauty and what would happen. Of course, it says Miss Wisconsin goes Burger in the bottom line. What would happen if that beautiful movement was all you got? The satire went into issues of a credit card cemetery, a place where you could bury the credit card, and really resided in this journey of happy God bless America. Probably Obama is God bless America, and then Bush, the Bush years when this was written, was God, you better bless America. It then went on into Jerusalem, and with a massive aerobatics display, spent billions of dollars, $40 billion on 3 buildings, rebuilding the temple, rebuilding the mosque, and rebuilding the great church there, which isn't, and ultimately thinking of a way of performing architecture where you would get what you wanted. These are the troopers with their logo to build and to destroy. The rock you probably know about, I won't go into it, but it's the column where Barak went up, Muhammad went up on the horse Barak, and where Isaac was nearly killed, and in the bottom left-hand corner where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. So this incredible rock resides in that town, and so that in the satire, the idea was to rotate it constantly and make it the new axis mundi. And so along with that was reading of end times. Here is a page out of my sketchbook. It's 11 inches wide. It's not very big. And what I was interested in was how these incredibly rich and dense moments of the visionary landscape could come into moments where number presides. And so I would comb these incredible texts looking for number patterns. And after that was over, I thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to go and live in a place like that? And so I decided to uproot with my wife Laura and daughter, and we moved to New Harmony, Indiana. It was originally set up as a millenarian utopia, waiting for the second coming, and it is 5 blocks wide and 3 blocks across. That for the hand and this for the Trinity. And it was then taken over by a slightly insane but brilliant personality called Robert Owen. Marx reckoned he was the first communist because he wrote about a community that would be there and good for everybody. So part of that project that Robert Owen made was the philanthropy. Charles Fourier's Utopia brought into full 3-dimension a working man's town in the middle of Indiana, the bottom corner of Indiana, and today it is a slightly different place. It has traces of these great moments, but then an incredibly intense set of buildings, not very many of them, but my goodness, are they strong, that have made what you might call a third utopia begun in the 1950s. Richard Meyer's New Harmony Athenaeum is in the back. So I just couldn't resist trying out this place. And better still is that New Harmony is on a fault line. It's on the part of the New Madrid fault system. And this is a very recent fault, earthquake of 5.4 that happened last year. And so, for example, here, this is New Harmony on the Wabash River. There is, if you draw a line here that goes up to here, that's the fault line. And I managed to build or find a house that was 100 feet off the fault line. And in this town also are these stupendous whirlwinds, tornadoes. It's on the big tornado alley. This house just a few miles away from us. And here is the great tornado of 1852, New Harmony. And if you want to see any of that sort of algorithmic drawing that is so much in fashion, we did that down there at that time. So, yeah, this is a more recent one. It's not a Frank Gehry, it's a corn crib. Just a couple of years ago, this happened. And then, of course, we have fabulous floods. There's a 6-mile floodplain in this town, and the river comes up 4 out of 7 years to this kind of height. And not to be outdone, there's fire, of course. We are in an oil field, and so there's constant smell of lovely oil and flames and methane and everything. In fact, this is the apocalypse, the town of the apocalypse. And of course, we always have bird flu. This is a local farmer right around the corner. So it's got it all. And I thought, well, you know, what would it be to go and live in a town that is the full visceral experience, where you know, all of those things that happen in cities you don't get, but you have them happen in this tiny little town with a long history of this, and then a weather presence and a disease presence, which is enormously powerful. In the town, we have all sorts of buildings. There's these little beautiful little houses. They're actually understood to be some of the first mass-produced housing. There was a factory that made all of the timber work and pumped these things out. Down here is a Charles Renwick, a beautiful Victorian laboratory where the US had its first geological survey station, an antebellum house, and then a granary. And then there they are, 1, 2, 3, and then this is Charles Renwick's house for the US Geological Survey. And even the footsteps of the angel Gabriel are in this town. So we have it all. Dare I say, the landscape, morel mushroom, major big deal here. Birds coming out of the wazoo, creatures, animals. I mean, it is the absolute pastoral landscape. And then there is the other side, the dark side. This isn't in New Harmony, but there's an exodus that goes to the annual, actually semi-annual Festival of Machine Guns down in Kentucky. And as it says, you know, better than Tarantino, just sign up and rent a machine gun. The US has 20,000 licenses for machine guns. And this festival has them all. You can even rent this howitzer and for $250 blow away a Porsche or a school bus, a fridge, whatever you feel like. These are a bunch of doctors. And actually, I was working for one of your faculty members who was making a movie down here, so that's why I was there. This is a special moment where all the machine guns went off at once, firing at barrels of oil with dynamite on them and percussion players. There's the school bus here, and it was pretty intense, an incredible moment. This is, I mean, it's better than the song. I mean, there's a minibus, Happy Families minibus, a fridge or a stove or something, with literally thousands of bullet holes in it. And to give you a sense of the the atmosphere in New Harmony and Posey County, I don't know if you're reading along the top here, but it's pretty extraordinary. This annual camp of 10-year-old kiddies who blow off 14,000 rounds of ammunition in an afternoon and think nothing of it whatsoever. The babysitting class run by the Red Cross, every little girl has to be able to unload a handgun because it's just, you know, the parents have always got guns and little Johnny's going to come down the corridor. So I am interested in places like this. I'm interested in the great paradoxes that we have in this country and elsewhere in the world of these kind of sublime moments of thoughtfulness, and then in exactly the same afternoon you can have these extremely strong and otherworldly experiences with the local inhabitants. Down here, kind of interesting, was the deal for U of I students to actually meet Donnie Martin. I had to write this contract. Yeah, the students will sign a waiver, no student will handle a fire gun, the activity is not related to their passing in class, and the activity is entirely voluntary. So this is what happens when education and real America meets. Like when you want to know what's going on in this country, this is the kind of waiver that you might have to sign. Of course, I couldn't resist. This is also done with a faculty member of UIC making a movie. And at this moment, someone took this photograph, and there were 3 shells in the air. It's an Uzi firing at a duck or something like that. And one in the chamber, and I got to thinking, you know, we have an ineffable moment of number here. There is, on the one side, this instrument of death, and then on the other side, this incredible moment of measure. And I'm fascinated by measurement and things that can be measured, and things that can't be measured. The whole kairos of time, the ticking time, and then the chronos and kairos, chronos, the ticking time, and kairos, that very strange place within measurement that doesn't fit. And so in New Harmony, the kinds of projects I'm interested in is coming to terms with what the number 1 million means. And what does a million look like? What does a billion look like? What does 100,000 million look like? And this is one of those great piles that you might see. It is the great monad, the singular moment within which there are billions and trillions of little tiny moments. It's like one in many. And I've had a long-standing love affair with geometry, practicing it, and trying to understand how it can be a device that can make measure and make a sense of fairness. And this is a diagram of as many two-dimensional systems as I could think of, all fitting together. So this project of measurement as seen in a machine gun, and then measurement as practiced in a piece of ground. These are students with IIT and now also the Art Institute drawing these constructions on Montrose Beach and kind of feeling that very, very intense sense of accuracy, of judicious measurement, of inevitability, the fact that humans can't invent geometry. It's all there to be found and to be discovered, lying underneath the ground. This is an oval that we built, taking hours and hours and hours to do. But when Bob talks about an interest in number and pattern, whether it's in beans or peas or bullets or in the ground, it's all interesting. And so another initiative down in New Harmony is to actually do what I would call a Euclidean Suzuki program. A Euclidean Suzuki program. Rather than play the violin, to play geometry. And so the idea is to take baseball diamonds all over the country and have the little kiddies make these wonderful constructions, and to overturn difficulty in thinking number, in pedagogy, and thinking pattern and pedagogy, and going with the real thing, the real scale. Inevitably, Beans comes into this. In reading through Pythagoras' documents, of course he didn't write them, they were the Roman tell-alls done later. There are these amazing moments where Pythagoras talks about beans, and not in a nice way. He talks about them being about sex and voting and money and eating the head of your father. And I thought, what the hell is this doing in a treatise about geometry? And so in the desire to just draw and look and observe, we made some drawings and photographs of beans. And of course, here we are. Here's a fava bean, the one that Pythagoras is talking about, having these qualities of sexuality and so on. And ladies and gentlemen, there is, in essence, something for everybody here. No one's going to be disappointed. And Pythagoras had stumbled onto this incredible moment of a device that was all about the metaphor of creation. It was just the sex and nothing else. And I mean, if you look closely at the bean, there is the bulge in the pocket, this little hole here where water enters the bean, and then the place of the umbilical cord of the bean to the pod goes, and then there's two little tiny lumps. They're little lumps. And so all the boys' anatomy and all the girls' anatomy are in here. And beans at the same time have these incredibly beautiful seed coats. And this is a photograph of the bean, and here's the root, and then there are the leaves of the new plant. And so there's also really naughty, as you can see. What is interesting to me here is that Pythagoras, we know him for one thing, but then this is the other Pythagoras. The Pythagoras where the visceral comes into being, that the dryness of number and the ripeness of sexuality is one and the same thing. That the notion of monad, of one thing, one being, that can propagate and make sets of numbers in subsequent plantings, well, one planting, but then subsequent plantings, would all make sense. And Pythagoras forbade his students to eat beans. You couldn't even go in a bean field, and I won't go into the story, but it's really ripe and really rich. Beans make a wonderful device of counting. 1 becomes 2 just by splitting it. 2 becomes 4, and there is our old friend the Platonic lambda, which works really well in beans, probably the device of counting of choice. And this in itself relates back to the Timaeus, which then moves forward to all of the Renaissance architectural number theory of having proportions and all of that of buildings fit. So beans and number, number and proportion, proportion and architectural theory, and now to the present. And living in New Harmony, we are on a major flyway, and this is 250,000 snow geese rising at the same time. And I can't tell you what an awe-inspiring thought that is, but when we were watching this, we realized that there were 3 sets of geometries going on. Down here is, guess what, flocking theory. And up here, there were 2 spirals of these birds moving in counter directions. And then up here, you can just see them beginning to form the angles, the lines. And so in one moment, you have these 3 places of architectural number theory, of flocking, of the whole spiral and all of that curvature, and then good old Euclid up in the top. And this is one of the great moments of living in the countryside, because you get to witness the proximity of different systems that sadly in architectural theory are, you know, there's those people like the Euclid over here, and then there's the algorithm people over here, and then there's these people over here. But when you actually witness this stuff for real, you see that it's all one beautiful system and should not be cut up into pieces. Trees doing incredible things. And this is just Flotsam making these collections of the primitive hut. And likewise, at the same time, this is a three-dimensional tiling system that I've been working on that allows for both conditions to take place. The algorithmic on the right, we set a little thing going, or I didn't do it because I didn't really get into that, but someone else did. And then that sense of Cartesian order. And these are drawings again from a sketchbook of the great Truchet tiling system. What I'm interested in is a rich module, geometric module, that can permit many, many things to happen without prejudice. This is my alma mater down at IIT, in the middle of the triptych of Chicago jobs, where this cube, it looked great in this building, I tell you, it was absolutely smashing. I love this building. But here again, the same cube that can make good old-fashioned stripes, in here, set it another way and establish it another way, it finds a two-dimensional spiral that then becomes a jagged line. And so just one thing can do many, many things. The little kiddies, they love doing this. And then this was an enactment that we did at the Wexton Center. When you work on geometry hard and study geometry, you can't avoid the four-limb spiral. It's just part of the deal. And in my studies of Greek vases, there are many four-limb spirals. And we had a long discussion in IIT when we were building a wall, whether to make a wall of spirals, otherwise known as swastikas. And it was a very, very complex discussion. And we realized that there was, in geometry, areas of taboo, areas where you could not go. And however vital the swastika is to architectural theory and practice, of geometric practice, that you just can't go there. And so we decided in a 10-minute period to go there in this building to bring back a sense of the majesty of this form that Hitler so single-mindedly wrecked for us all. Here is the tile in another form, and this is a drawing done 10 years previously for the Boathouse. And I guess that this sort of place of just sitting with a decade of going for essences, going for real abstraction, for absolute blackness, absolute whiteness, and trying to understand what that primary sense of movement is. That's been the journey of the decade. And then associated with that is New Harmony is a big labyrinth town. It has two very important labyrinths in it. And it fits with a project that I'm working on, which has been to draw labyrinths by hand. I've drawn hundreds of them, and over a 10-year period. And now starting all over again by thinking of the labyrinth as the most essential architectural plan, whereby very, very simple movements take place with minimum building, like one rake, 8 hours, the fragility of wind or no wind. And in other words, to come to terms with these simple spiral moments and see what it does to bodies. I'll just quickly go through labyrinths because they are very much an important part of the work. In essence, a labyrinth is a single path, a journey, and in here it's the yellow. And then on the right, a maze is a multi-cursor journey where it bifurcates, it splits. This is a modern term. And labyrinths, they are in essence, over on the left-hand side, zigzags and spirals. And how you make one is to swinch one end, in other words, you swinch that end, swinch it, and then pull this around and form the form. And the spirals, swastika forms and spirals that I was working on are part of a long project about vases from the geometric period of Greece. And these two are labyrinths. But I remember sitting here a few months ago and listening to Ben van Berkel talk about folds, his folded work. And this is my folded work. It's like another similar kind of journey of what it is to think of something that is a line, and then to pack it and round pack it and then body pack it later on. And so my sister lives down in New Mexico, and we've been making these projects. And this is where it gets good for me, of clearing over a 3-year period a piece of ground of every living seed. And as I'm sure some of you know, a teaspoon of soil has literally thousands of seeds in it that are dormant. And so the idea of thinking of this tabula rasa, a drawing, whereby designs are held in your memory, in your mind, and then trotted out in the landscape, it is important. This is part of the studio, literally hundreds of these damn things. I wrecked my neck. And this is at the 2008 Venice Biennale, where Aaron Betsky was kind enough to bring in the woo-woo people into the high temple of architecture. Very briefly, for me, there's this quality of light and substance, and then something that just is, just sits there, and then there could be a moment where some very simple move is made, where you can start wheeling around, where that move is made, you start wheeling around. It could be geometricized, and between these two states of being on the outside and being on the inside, that for me is the realm of architectural production, architectural drawing. It's not the outside, it's not the inside, it's somewhere in between. And there's this moment in every creation whereby you see it, you are here, and you have the opportunity to go get it. It's the fall of man. It is the notion of desecration of another. And this is the great moment of going from the outside to the inside, which is absolutely essential to architecture. Of course, James Turrell has made this in his Rodin crater, no question about it. So I think that the architecture drawing is this one really, in as much as having broken the, having made the break of the desire to eating the apple, of the desire to have that you cannot have. The moment of architecture is to delay that moment all over again. So rather than go A to B, there's this desire to go very, very slowly around the thing before you get there. And this is the preparation of that ring. And here is a manner of drawing spiral, of very, very slowly walking with incredible care until you get that form. Here's a student from IIT who did the same sort of thing. And so in the family of labyrinths, whereas we went around the edges, the first architectural drawing before we went into the middle, here's the next version where you get to that point and you think, oh, maybe I can walk a little bit all over again, and then get closer and closer, delaying, the whole question of delaying the moment before you have it, of savoring. And so the whole taxonomy of walking that is exemplified by these labyrinths is really an issue of delaying the moment until you have it in your hand, a better knowledge of it. And labyrinths aren't only related to purple people in Oregon or 13th century Catholics in France. This is a prayer written in Chinese but found in Korea of a Buddhist prayer. And as you go around the courtyard, the temple courtyard, reciting this incredible piece of writing, translated by a Korean from Old Chinese to Chinese, back to Korean, and then into English. So it might be a bit lumpy, but actually she did a beautiful job of it. But the question here is to, here's our old friend the swastika again, the four-limbed spiral, which I might add is a torso and four legs that go like this. For me, this is what architecture looks like when you strip everything away and just have memory and a surface to walk on. A memory of what it is that you have known and what you wish to know, and then a piece of poetry that goes along. And of course, the Buddhist labyrinth has no center. You just keep walking. So you step in and then you step out. And so there is this moment of reenactment. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways of cutting this. Here is the great labyrinths from medieval France, where the movement is a staggering one. You make 2 steps forward and 1 back, 2 steps forward. And so it's a very different spatial experience when you walk it. And forgive me, but this is kind of what it is. At that time, 12-year-old daughter did this without knowing how to do anything, and it was wonderful to watch. But nevertheless, it's an interesting form. You notice here that each time you go around, you make, you can do it here. You can make a full ring forward, quarter back, full ring forward, a quarter back, full ring forward, and then a quarter back, and on it goes. And so you have this in this labyrinth form. It's very, very confrontational. Everything is bumping into each other, whereas the other forms are much more ameliorative and restorative in a simple manner. So once again, what are you going to do with this? Can you just not? I mean, is it just illegal to do? And I just think it's time to bring that four-limbed spiral back into parlance. Whether it can be done or not, I don't know. And then drawing is one thing and walking is another thing. But what is it to make some very, very simple line drawings of one spiral going in one direction and another spiral going in another? And creatures love these things. We made one for my sister's horse, and this is a huge lump of meat, like a 1-ton lump of meat, and it can hack it, it's really good. If you draw one of these on the beach in Chicago, it takes like 5 minutes to do. Little red things come and children, I guess they're called, and ducks, Canada geese. Yeah, they're all on there. Look at this, it's like everyone perfectly, freak photograph. So, yeah, what I've been interested in this decade is doing things of enormous simplicity and seeing what happens. Like very, very, very stripped down, no economy, just a $5 cart and maybe a rake and so on. This was a truly corny moment, but it's so corny that it brings tears to your eyes. A man came from California to commission a labyrinth, and I'm not really any good at that kind of thing, like at all. So he came, and I said, well, we could do something, but let's forget about stone and everything. So he took his business suit off, and I gave him some shorts and took him to the beach. And he was a klutz, very klutzy guy. And I said to him, I said, Paul, why don't you just like slow down and walk as carefully as you can? And so he started to walk around, like this, and he was getting into it. And at the end, he looks around, this is the corny bit, and he says, now I understand what an ecological footprint is, which is, it's like really bad. But I have to say, it's touching. It's really touching. Because it's only when you stop and think about how you're walking that the way that you sit yourself and situate yourself begins to make sense. This is, back to the naughty bits. This is the great, it's on this vase here, the great story of the Minotaur and Theseus and the first architect, Daedalus, handing over the ball of thread. This is all in our story. And then down here is the labyrinth. And then after Daedalus had given Ariadne the thread who gave it to Theseus, Ariadne and Theseus went off around the bushes and did what you see on the right-hand side, and the story went on. So this whole question of number and the hyper-visceral, you find it all over the place. And it's in the countryside, all those rows of corn, that big monad of corn, and then the guys and gals going off to the shooting range and having a wild moment. So we're actually going to, with the good old boys and girls, we're going to reenact this with 7 horses, which is actually pretty interesting and pretty good fun. But this is the point that I was aiming at, which is a kind of moment of getting completely lost in the drawing. These are all hand-drawn, same pencil, blah, 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 like that. And that's what I'm looking for, is to be taken out of the visceral through the highly abstract and back into the visceral through the drawing. And this is why I really have trouble with Solowit. It's just too geometric for me. There's not enough of the good old boys in his work. And there may be, I don't know, I can't imagine, I haven't met him or anything like that. But it's just something missing. And he's a terrible geometer, I might add. 2 or 3 forms. It's, but it's really good work. Yeah. So a couple of years ago, at a conference about the ineffable, I thought that it was time to try to measure things, to look for things that couldn't be measured. To think where in architecture there could be a way of operating that was outside of matter, outside of anything, and led you to this ineffable moment. Walking is a big deal down there. We worked on a pilgrimage walk, and of course, I'm not going to walk 70 miles. I'm sure Bob isn't either. So I hired a young man came to me and he said, "Have you got a job? I haven't got any money. I'm really out of work." And I said, "Fine, $12 an hour, which is the going rate, double the minimum wage at that time." And I said, "Well, how about walking for a week?" And so he set off with his pit bull, trudging across the landscape, and the last 10 miles he had to carry the pit bull into the monastery that was waiting for him. So, yeah, walking is very important. Here's the great Islamic Hajj written up. I reconstructed it from texts rather than looking at the pictures. And then, of course, once again, here is that great moment of 2 million human beings in one place, walking 7 circles. And in fact, the whole city is just leaches out, where all of the hundreds of thousands of people live and work, and they don't live and work there at all. Actually, they come for a couple of weeks on it, and all walk around this cube. And so, yeah. Another part of Life in New Harmony is to write about the stuff that's gone on there. With Michelangelo Sabatino, we've assembled this book that is hopefully going to come out. I just wanted to talk to you about a very intense man, Frederick Kiesler, who built nothing down there, but very nearly did. On the left-hand side is Philip Johnson's roofless church, in essence a stupa. He was doing it when he was doing the nuclear reactor in Israel in the Negev desert. And on the right-hand side here is Frederick Kiesler's project called the Grotto for Meditation. So on the left is a roofless church, a beautiful building that has this wooden dome at one end. You can get a sense of this kind of terminal moment in Johnson's career of leaving Nice and that slightly Germanic signature that he liked so much, and leaving that and getting involved in another sort of form altogether. And then working with Lipschitz, the great sculptor, who built a sculpture, the gates on one side, and then the descent of the dove. Great and important Jewish sculptor making a project for a non-denominational sanctuary. There it is, as Lipschitz's Descent of the Dove. And here's Johnson, Lipschitz, Jane Owen, and a local person whom I don't know. And I put this photograph in because of this up here. And this is a special architectural moment. For the architects in the audience, you might enjoy this special detail up here of a coping stone, almost flat, no flashing at all. Just a plate here, 12 inches by 12 inches, right here, that joins the stones. There was no flashing in this building. And poor old Philip had all of these walls explode on him, and Jane Owen over here suing him to within an inch of his life. So there's hubris in these things. Another, for those Philip Johnson aficionados in the audience, another project of Johnson's at the church that was very nearly built down there in 1965, and with these towers marching across the landscape. But that's a building. And the little chapel that we saw was going to go on that spot here. And right here is Frederick Kiesler's Grotto for Meditation. Frederick Kiesler, a little bit of bio, he was the endless house guy. Here he is in his business togs, here he is in his birthday suit. I mean, he was this kind of architect, needed to work naked whilst making architecture. And this is the quintessential drawing, which anybody who's involved in digital architecture will probably appreciate this thing. It's early, I forget what date it is, but it's before the Second World War. And he's the guy who made the Shrine of the Book, where the Dead Sea Scrolls are. And this is his air conditioning system, a beautiful system of just squirting the tiles with water and cooling it down. Really, really great system. And Frederick Kiesler was invited by Jane Owen to come and make a grotto for meditation. And so he came down here, here's the invitation, postcard, and this is the site that he was given. And he began by drawing and looking at all the trees and all of that sort of thing, and then found this conch shell down in the bottom left-hand corner and drew it. And when he was in New York the week before, he'd been drawing fish. So this project here again is a fish in New Harmony and a shell that was in New Harmony. New Harmony's big shell town. Thomas Say was the great conchologist who did his work in New Harmony in the 19th century. And so Kiesler began to form this thing, kind of fishy, kind of shelly, and mother and child. And in this grotto was going to be the Holy Family. That's baby Jesus and Mum and Dad, Joseph and Mary. And so his project began to form itself. This was done 2 years before he died. Begun in 62, in concept. 63, it was running. Oh, something's happened. Okay. There, okay, there, right. So, you know, in this set of drawings that Kiesler makes is this incredible fidget between these two forms. And ultimately he came up upon the idea of a large shell, and down in the bottom left-hand corner is the Holy Family here, and then there are the signature lights that he had around it. And here's one of those lovely plasticine models that he made in his studio, behind which on the back right-hand corner is a later model that he worked on. And in here is the plan of the building. That you walk in, you walk over a stream, and then you sit on a little step, and then look at the sculpture. And here's Len Pitkowski, Kiesler's assistant last year, assembling the model that he hadn't touched for 40 years, 50 years actually, now 50 years. It's a very touching photograph. And there is a project, there is it in bronze. And so New Harmony has this sort of thing going on in it. It's an incredible town because you have in it this titanic struggle between the modernist represented by Philip Johnson, who's making his great Meissen walls, and on the other side, the other side of modernism, of the deeply organic, all happening at the same moment. And I managed to reassemble this incredible correspondence between Johnson, Kiesler, the patroness, and then a curveball, the great theologian Paul Tillich, whom this building was dedicated to. Tillich was, actually his brain is from down at the University of Chicago. He was put in a bottle, and I just learned this yesterday. But he was a great Protestant theologian who did his final works that we've seen. But you know, this is the real thing. I mean, the bottom paragraph that you can't read. I regret very much to be forced to this decision of resigning. But all of my life has been dedicated to consistency of ideas, and if I can't follow them to the bitter end, I must forsake them. And here's that kind of great Kieslerian moment that, of course, made it impossible for him to build anything in his life except for the project. So this is how it ended up. There was one more iteration, really beautiful scheme of a hedge that you enter, and then go into these very shallow depressions, and then go into the shell, which is sort of this form. It's really masterful, and a lovely piece of work. And then, of course, Kiesler, who was a push sort of guy. Here was the Happy Jesus family carved in balsa wood, and then clothed in homespun from Palestine. And even the priest realized that this was not going to work in a dripping grotto. So Kiesler then makes this statue of Prometheus made in bronze. And of course, Prometheus is the other figure, the other new being, the Christ figure of Greek mythology, the one who made man. And of course, this is where Kiesler went too far, and he got the chop. To substitute baby Jesus for Prometheus was just going too far. But nevertheless, the building, he kept going. This incredible correspondence describes this man who was making decisions from hospital and ended up with this final plan, which was the grotto with these little pods in it for people to lie and look at Prometheus. And here is the journey where visitors would take, and then these are the meditators. The story of him trying to build this thing is comical and also tragic. Here he is, the one who wanted to make a n-dimensional continuous structure of continuous tension, anything but. So the project was cancelled, but not without trying. And here it goes into its tailspin, and then on the bottom right-hand corner, Philip Johnson bails him out and makes the plan that Kiesler couldn't make for a grove of trees for Paul Tillich. But you know, Kiesler did at least order the materials. Here is this beautiful glazed tiles, boxes of them. There are 2,000 square feet of these tiles that are still in New Harmony, actually, that were going to cover the shell. And once again, for the Digerati in the audience, this is a special moment. I mean, here it is. You know, here is the special moment of these forms of pack and on the go and so on. At the same time, Kiesler was making Bucephalus. It has just been cast 40 years later. It's Bucephalus, the horse of, I think it was Alexander. And here is the other cave that he's making. Here's my dear wife lying in it, not too happy about being the subject. But this was what the grotto for meditation would have been like had Kiesler had the opportunity to build it. And I might add also what the Enders houses would have been like as well, where he was cutting and scratching and carving. And more recently, a couple of years ago, down in Houston, I had a visiting professorship, and we tried to remake the grotto. And it was a wonderful journey, still is a wonderful journey. And of course, I met my match with, look how incredibly nervous I am looking at all of this stuff. But they did a fabulous job of developing a structure, and we've now have just finished building it. And it's going to be a grotto that will be covered with vines. And so Kiesler rides again. Here's the little model that the students made, and then here's the full-scale stainless steel structure that Andrew Farana and Joe Meppelink, the two assistant professors there, brought to life. Yeah. To the okay. Yeah. Well, you know, I'm going to end now. I could go on, but I'd like to just share with you. This is going to be kind of Rube Goldberg-y, but I'd still like to do it if I can. Let you hear. Give me a moment. I'd like to just let you listen to Frederick Kiesler talking about architecture and the grotto of meditation.
Mr. Kiesler, in what way does the design of the grotto for meditation fit into your credo of a new architecture?
Well, the grotto for meditation in New Harmony is really one of the culminating points of a credo of mine which goes back more than 40 years ago, when I first in Vienna conceived of the endless house. With other words, the principle of continuity which we experience in nature has to be transferred into architecture. Architecture, and particularly so-called functional architecture, is a limited aspect and a broken aspect of rooms, of buildings, of conglomeration of buildings, rather than the flow and interrelation of forces which are at the base of all architecture and all life doings. Now, that would presume really an education of an architect which we don't have today in science, in psychology, in biochemistry, and in physics particularly. And I think it will come. But the work of mine has always pointed towards the infinity in design. We might finish a building, but there are many ways how to give you the impression that the outer and inner world meet there, and that the inhabitant would have to have the possibility of being aware that he is part of a cosmic world, but not only part of a street or a plaza or a community.
Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to field. Say again. Kiesler died in 1965. Yeah. You know what I love about this text is that it's so slow. It's incredibly, the way that he speaks, you know, it's like mesmerizing. Beatrice Colomina came down and gave a talk at the University of Houston, and she ripped through text like this, like so fast. And I thought, oh God, I can't do this. It's just not fair. Because this man is like, oh, so big, you know, all of that. And it is right that his work would be found in New Harmony. Of course, it was built there, but it wasn't for a long time. The reason, the question was, why was the project cancelled? Well, it was cancelled because of a fight between Paul Stillick and it was a fight of ideals, basically. It was like this goofy thing for a man of great thought and theological consequence, and it was just too much for him. That's why they did it. There was no problems with construction. It's just that the problem is that there was no money. The excuse of money was made to not build the project. But there's a whole correspondence of Kiesler justifying the construction costs and having the great engineers out of New York saying this is no big deal, anybody could build this. So the problem was not construction, it was the will to make construction.
Have you figured out your next expedition?
Yes. Well, yeah, the question is, have I figured out the next expedition? I mean, phases of life, they're usually broken by boredom, impossible circumstances. Rarely do they have a crescendo in like a consummate interest in something, so they just get better and better. I don't know what will happen next. On the menu is to finish off the numbers book and the geometry book. Now the New Harmony book of what happened to modernism in the 40s, actually in the 50s and 60s, and 70s, what happened there. Now that's done. I don't know what will happen. I don't know. I mean, one of my heroes, and many of you will know her, is Jennifer Blumen, who went, I think she went AWOL. And she just said one day, is this true? I'm just going to stop practicing architecture. And she went off into the South. And one of the great moments and monuments of particularly feminist architectural theory. So that might be a possibility. It's just to go AWOL. But I don't think so. Actually, I don't know. I don't know what will happen. I don't know.
still, you know, if I could build a building before I die, I think I would be pretty happy about that. But I'm not pushing for that. Yeah.
If there's anything in this sort of experience of the European cultural tradition imposing or not being able to impose this mark on American landscapes, like there's something there that doesn't exist.
Yes.
Like you said, thrown out of it.
Right.
Incredible idea. Come here.
So Judith's question is a beautiful question. Is
And you.
yes, is it a sort of predestined fate that European intellectuals have of coming to the United States with the full expectation that they finally will be able to realize the vision, particularly in the countryside? And so you have many figures, and certainly Robert Owen, who had in his mind doing this embodiment of Charles Fourier's phalanstery in the landscape, and certainly Frederick Kiesler, who tried up in Toronto, down in the swamps of West Palm Beach, now West Palm Beach, to make the Endless House, and even in the courtyard of the Museum of Modern Art, one of the most protected places, literally and figuratively and fiscally, and yet he still could not bring this about. And so Judith is implying that the European just can't do it. What a question. What's that? Right. Yeah. So that you get caught up in your own vortex of desire, and what was Rothko European? They were all Russians, right? And then Rothko, who I don't know if you saw the Guggenheim exhibition those years ago, but all of the early paintings are there in this spiral, and then the ones we love, and then it ended up with these paintings of blackness and whiteness, like black paintings and white paintings, and then this little cryptic phrase saying, Mr. Rothko drew a bath of hot water in his studio and took along his X-Acto knife and slit his wrist, and that was the end of the story. So, that's the tragedy of the European journey into America, of being desirous of this vortex of something realized, and in his case, watching the color leach out of his body after having gone through this terrible state of darkness and light, black and white. And it is the tragedy. He lived the tragedy like no one has lived. And it's always go. Yeah.
Your obsession, right? Like,
yes.
Obviously, there's a thing that we could live about a subject.
Yes.
Right. And the house that you had shown
yes.
10 years ago, I think that is dramatically different from every other obsession that you're showing, because they're all in plan.
Right.
Which is economically sexual.
Yeah, enormously three-dimensional.
Right. And I'm wondering, because suddenly you turn objective, I'm wondering.
Yes. Okay. So the question is, this is incredible. The question is how. First of all, what is the nature of this issue of obsession, and what does that accomplish? What does eccentricity accomplish? Why did I turn from that obsessive house and very experiential house, the remote house? Why did I turn to that, to something that is completely planimetric and either or-ish? Yeah. Well, for people who are termed, you see, the medical profession has a way of terming people, like manic depressive or schizophrenic. The architects have the same thing. Like I'm called obsessive. It's like, okay, he's the obsessive person, but as far as I'm not obsessive. I just live. It's just like a way of life. And it's maybe a little intense at times, but it's Groningen, you're already seeing the absurdity of the day in which you reside. When you come to America, you get called eccentric. But if you live in England, it's all like that. Okay, so let's get to plan section. For the geometer, one dimension is revealed in 2 dimensions. 3 dimensions is potent and pregnant in 2 dimensions. And then for the more advanced geometer, for example, Marcel Duchamp, the 4th dimension and then off into the nth dimension. So you don't need 3 dimensions to think. You can do it in 2 dimensions. You don't need 2 dimensions to think. You can do it in 1 dimension. So I chose 2 dimensions because it was easier. There was an opportunity to really get down to basics. And the module, the 3-dimensional module, was as far as I was willing to go into 3 dimensions, which basically made walls that would have surfaces that would begin to pixelate and dematerialize. So, I guess that's what I would say. That if you're interested in pursuing a subject, pretty good idea to start removing the dross and try and get to the essence of it. And if that means going from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions, then it will just make things easier. It doesn't mean to say that you can't go back to 3 dimensions. You certainly can. And then off into the 4th dimension. But what I was interested in was going from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions to 1 dimension, and then finding a way to reside in this ineffable space, which is no-dimensional and hyperdimensional at the same time. As a friend was mentioning today at the Art Institute, kind of things to think about, that like when you walk down the street, you see someone's umbrella. For some, it's just an umbrella, but for others, it's the whole history of the climate system. But you only need an umbrella to understand the whole climate system. It's a Stephen Johnson remark. He's a great writer. So that's as far as I can go. Is if you're interested in pursuing a subject, do it to end game and don't harm yourself or anybody around you, and start training. Yes.
The model of practice they bring forth here appears to be monastic, for lack of a better term. But what would you say to the challenge that it could also appear to be something more like that of the Shadowland farmer, someone who is a great connoisseur of the landscape and of animals, of literature, of culture, yes, but in fact doesn't depend on those things to make a living or eat. That you talked about that, this notion of reducing the practice to essential elements, but one could also look at it as not necessarily productive, but also incredibly luxurious. Could you talk about?
Yeah, sure. Well, unfortunately, I'm not a gentleman farmer, and arrived in America with actually a human skeleton on one hand and a raccoon coat in the other. So that's all I came with. That's how I came to Cooper Union. So I came with no money, and I earned my job teaching. So I have to work for a living. Thank you very much. But I think you spend your money and you spend your time in a way that is productive. For me, this is a productive endeavor of asking questions that maybe no one else is interested in asking. The whole question of what to do with the visceral and the abstract has not really, I'm not seeing it. You might say that, for example, because you all saw it on this wall, that Ben van Berkel does that. You could say that, but frankly, he's not much of a genre. He's a consumer of genre rather than a practitioner of that monastic principle you speak of. So, for me, there's enough room for everybody to work and to do things that are of interest to them, that they feel will be a contribution to the project at large. That's my contribution, is to be the person who is like trying to figure out what the bond is between between the very high and the very low, between the red states and the blue states, between the highly abstract and the visceral, between moments of historical precedent, and how to relate that to contemporary practice. You might be fair in saying that it's a voyeuristic way of working, but you know, I have some really wonderful friends in the army who take me into some pretty intense things and have brought me into their realm. Which does not happen with the gentleman farmer. The gentleman farmer is not really able to do that. Judith also spoke about the foreigner not being able to practice. Now, I am an expatriate, and I still do not have an American passport. James Joyce never became a Yugoslavian and needed to be out there in order to write about that. And I think that the expatriate's life is a tragic life, for sure, but something that is absolutely necessary. Because you get incredible clarity when you are not in your own country. It's like having four-dimensional glasses that you can see things in a very, very intense way. And so I would say that I belong less to the gentleman farmer end of things, but more to the tragic expatriate who is weighted with a millstone of observation and engagement of something that is not possible to do if you actually want to do it. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Anything missing?
No.
You're going to have a comeback?
Well, no.
Press a little harder?
No comeback. I mean, the question was sincere. It wasn't really posed as an accusation, but it was sincere sort of query. I'm just sort of, you know, one of the other underbellies of other ugly underbellies of American culture right now is just like the pure fact of debt. And
yes.
So as you know, from let's say the student's point of view, right? About the moment, that's a sort of reality. We think certain forms of practice are absolutely unattainable.
Unattainable.
So it's a question.
Absolutely. I mean, the other difference between our two schools is I didn't tell you how expensive it is to go to Art Institute. And
Marshall's an expensive one too.
Yeah. But for many students, they leave college, doesn't matter if it's architecture or anything else, with a mortgage that they have to pay off for the first 20 years of their life. And therefore do not have this freedom that you speak of. It's just not there. You have to have a job, and you have to make the payments. That's before you even have a house. And it is a very bitter pill, and it's awful to watch and actually take part in. So maybe this work is living that others can't. But good last question. Yes.
So, like, architects like trying to write the illusion that expressive in the whole architecture, for example, in the part of his house, he had a rebuilt house on the tree.
Yes.
So, my question is, how do you develop it? What do you provide, or where do you draw the line of how
in essence, the question is about, surely architecture is about making a roof over the head to protect you from the environment, and also, once you're in the environment, to have a way of communicating with it. In other words, to understand how a tree might fit around the building, or vice versa. You know, I'll refer to a great moment of a great line from John Hader, who was always asked this question: why don't you build like they're just drawings, and they're just drawings that you make. And he said, well, you know, I can live in them, but I know that you can't yet live in them. But maybe you will be able to one day. So that would be my response: is that you know, I can live in these places, and you know, it's the way it is. I don't see one as more important than another. They just both need to be